think for now, the fatigue is tangible, but they're still holding out some hope that the talks would be renewed. How realistic those talks, those hopes are, it's not clear. We are in very precarious times. It looks like the Islamic Republic is not so eager. I think what would show a real change would be the response of Russia and China. If the Russians and the Chinese publicly start showing fatigue and publicly start showing displeasure with Iran staying away from the Vienna talks, then I think then we're going to be in new, we could say, uncharted territory with regards to dealing with Iran's nuclear program after the election of Biden. But we have to wait and see.
I understand the rhetoric in Iran is all really blaming the United States for this impasse here. Now they're blaming Israel and the U.S. for what they say was this coordinated cyber strike on their gas stations last week. Is it more positioning in the hard line here ahead of these talks, or how does this all factor in?
Well, I think the Iranians are, one thing that's important for Ayatollah Khamenei is to have some kind of a legitimate reason for staying away from the talks and for basically taking his time. And that seems to, that he's saying that America should remove some of the existing sanctions, and they also want guarantees that America will never leave the deal, even if Iran keeps the deal. That is something which is impossible. America cannot provide such a guarantee that it wouldn't. This is a democracy, you can't do that. And for now, it seems that the Iranians are trying to use the Islamic Republic to legitimize the reason among the Iranian public as to why it's staying away from the talks. At the same time, the pressure on the Iranian public is increasing. Iran's economy is sinking every time we speak, David. The situation is getting worse. But the Islamic Republic seems to believe that it has the situation under control, and so far it has, and that the public are not going to the streets. And as long as that continues, the Islamic Republic feels that it can afford to adopt the current tough approach towards the nuclear talks.
Well, let's bring in the other so-called party to the issue. Israel here has been clearly sounding the alarm openly to all who will listen, but openly preparing for military options again, at least making statements. Are these thought to be credible deterrent messages being transmitted to Iran?
I think they are credible, David. I think it's to be honest, during Prime Minister Netanyahu's tenure, especially I remember around 2011, when there were so many threats being issued against Iran. Then I wasn't so sure, because back then America had far more soldiers in Iraq, certainly in Afghanistan, which the Iranians could target in retaliation. But now the number of Americans in Afghanistan is zero, and in Iraq it's dwindled significantly to, if I'm not mistaken, to 2,500. Excuse me. So I think the chances of a military strike are far more credible now. But the question always has to be asked that, okay, if Israel strikes, how long would it take for Iran to rebuild this nuclear program? And the more important question, could Iran use such a strike as a pretext to actually build a nuclear bomb? These are questions, important questions that have to be answered, but we in the open source world can only assume the answers. The people who actually have access to secrets in Tehran, if they do, would have a much more concise answer regarding these questions. And if the answer is that Iran could use an Israeli attack to quickly rebuild its nuclear program, or worse, it could use it as a pretext to actually make a nuclear weapon, and it's able to do so, then I think that would make the military option less attractive.
Meir Javendafar, thanks for being with us on the topic we continue to cover.